Hello and welcome to Frontline Conversations. Tamil Nadu's Dravidian politics has been causing ripples because of its exceptionalism to the Hindutva nationalism sweeping through the country. Its success stories of economic development, and it's much better than national average human development indices, have been such that the usage of the term Dravidian model of development is now commonplace. How did a social reformist movement going back more than 100 years that began as a movement against Brahmin domination turn into a political vehicle that has now dominated Tamil Nadu's politics for over 6 decades? A new book titled The Dravidian Pathway: How the DMK Redefined Power and Identity in South India, this is the book, seeks to explain this very question. And to discuss this whole question, I have with me the author, Vignesh Rajahmani. Welcome, Vignesh.
Thank you. Thank you, Nirupama. Thank you for the opportunities.
You know, reading your book, firstly, I was struck by the title, which says How the DMK Redefined Power and Identity in South India. Whereas we are mainly talking about Tamil Nadu, right? And so why do you use the word South India?
Two quick answers. In the conception stage itself, the DMK at the time, or right from Justice Party days, the Dravidian identity or the political identity in itself emerged from contributions of leaders from across all 4 states as we know them today. So until the linguistic reorganization happens, where clear boundaries are drawn on linguistic basis in 1956, in fact, the first 15 years of the Justice Party, in fact, had a lot of Telugu-speaking leaders at the helm. So right from the conception stage, or even the antecedents to federal ethos of the country came from T.M. Nair. And also when Annadurai imagined the Dravidian land, he thought of it as a federation which had free entry and free exit. As a federation of states, and each of the constituents would have free entry and free exit. This is much before the 16th Constitutional Amendment came in. And cut from there to about 2017-18, if I'm remembering right, Siddaramaiah also writes in his on his Facebook page about how he is distinctly Dravidian or South Indian, where he says he calls himself Kannadiga, and he in fact rehashes Annadurai's famous speech in the Rajya Sabha to talk about the constitutive element of India, which is the states in itself. So over the last 60, 70 years, we've seen some sort of a similarity or a lingering idea.
Yeah, I was also struck by the phrase that you use very often in the book, which is the Dravidian Tamil ethos. And the construction of this ethos, it was a deliberate construction as a key element of this transformation from a social movement to a political vehicle. Can we talk about this a bit?
Largely, identities that we have today across the world, and even particularly across the global south, are generally ascriptive identities. They are nativist at times. They can get nativist. They can get, and they have a tendency to become nationalistic as well, in a way that they're exclusionary. In this context,
Tamil is an ascribed identity, right?
Yes. So that's where when we look at Dravidian and Tamil together as a sum, or as so the sum is actually more than the total of its parts. So Dravidian is seen as, or is conceived as a land territory which had distinct cultural ethos, and also and this goes back to the works of K.K. Pillai, etc., which has been almost which goes back to about 1,000 years. And then even Aloysius, all of them have given us genealogies of how the land had its own cultural ethos and socio-cultural ethos. And this being the space, and Annadurai goes back to the Sangam era, the early Sangam era, where he speaks about this land as a land marked by egalitarian values. So cuts from there, what does the word Tamil then do? Tamil becomes a language as such, as against an identity. So when seen together, Dravidian gives the identity its ideological roots and its value roots or its moral code, and Tamil becomes a language or a cementing force which can be spoken against the hegemonic construct of Sanskrit or Hindi, let's say. So Tamil, in other words, becomes a vehicle of resistance through which values of counter hegemonic moral code can be communicated or can be conveyed. In other words, if one were to look at a lot of Tamil leaders as we know them today, they are not necessarily from Tamil Kudigal as a leader like Seeman, a nativist leader like Seeman would want to classify them as. They're not birth-based, but they are, so being Tamil is actually an identity where you be Tamil by doing something or by subscribing.
Higher than language.
Yes.
It's more than language.
Yes, it is definitely not an identity in an ascribed sense. So there was a question, why not just Dravidian?
Yeah.
But the question then goes back to the way in which Tamil language also went through reforms. But if we were to go to the work of, let's say, A.K. Ramanujan, he speaks about how, even Tamil as it is spoken and as it is written today went through a series of reforms for it to become a lot more accessible to people. It doesn't have. It's almost like how BBC invented English, which is not a dialect that's spoken in any part of England, but it is common to every part of England. It's in the same way, even the language Tamil went through so many reforms, unlike Andhra Pradesh. And therefore, not just Dravidian, but also Tamil.
Okay.
You make a language, accessible, and then you give a value system, or you build a value system, not just give, but build a value system through, which the language can be used to communicate.
Okay. Some of the most interesting parts of your book are about the differences between the personalities of that period within the Dravidian movement as well and outside it. So one of those differences, we'll take the first one between Periyar and Annadurai. In the way also they approached the concept of this Dravidian Tamil ethos. So and you speak about how Annadurai rooted it as he differed from Periyar in this way. He rooted the Dravidian Tamil ethos in the ancient Sangam era. So why was this important politically?
Thanks for this question. Actually, I love this question. So, two quick points for this. The differences, if we were to simplify between Periyar and Anna, Periyar was vocally anti-Brahmin because he was in the business of persuasion. He needed to speak to people from the lower castes and Dalit caste groups as we know them today. So he spoke to the bottom two sections of the society, the Shudras and the Dalits. And he was in the business of persuasion. He was in the business of talking to people. Therefore, he needed to sort of speak a certain language. And therefore, while Periyar's ideas were anti-Brahminical, he came off as very anti-Brahmin. And Periyar did not believe in the notion of history. He said, forget history and forget tomorrow, because the Hindu system, or even any religion for that matter, roots or particularly the Hindu religion, which he was interested in, either locates your current suffering to a past, to a past life, or the problems of the past life, or some happiness in the future life. So he said, you need to root yourself in the present, and you can make yourselves better. And therefore, he did not believe in the notion of history. For him, Dravidian could just be a 10 by 10 room that either I am sitting or you are sitting in, where the values of egalitarianism existed. Uh, um, and therefore, he was interested in the Bhakti movement because Bhakti movement was the time period where all of the Dravidian movement leaders thought that caste crept into the Tamil society. And this is also narrated by Aloysius in his book, or even K. Pillai for that matter in his seminal work. Um, and also Nick Dirks, if one were to read him as he should be read. So, but Anna had, and make no mistake, Periyar converted a political party. And Periyar was a leader of the Justice Party, which is the political party for about 7 to 8 years, and then he converts it into a social movement. One of the few instances where a political party becomes a social movement. So Anna now breaks away, creates the DMK, and for Anna, he needs to bring people together. And one of the fundamental ideas of any identity that he understands or he comes to understand is a value of antiquity. For instance, the Sanskrit or the Hindi or the Brahmanical identity for him held some kind of a past. And this is also narrated by Dipankar Gupta in his work in terms of how in 18 and 1900s, a lot of caste groups, middle and lower caste groups, wrote their own histories and then went to the British officers and said that give us Kshatriya status, which journalists like Aptos Bal call a buffer zone. The Kshatriya is a buffer zone where you sort of put anything. And so in this case, Anna then realizes the importance of what the value of antiquity holds in any identity, because you need to sort of feel nice about, or you need to feel that you are there, you've been there, and you're not just
rooted somewhere, rooted in something.
Yes, some rooted. Yeah, some rooted. Yes. So therefore, he moves back to the abstract Sangam era that we have limited understanding of, but whatever understanding that we have of it, it is a place marked by egalitarian values, where Ur and Sabaigal had women speaking. There was no caste system as we know it today. There was no Idangai Valangai. There was nothing of that sort. None of the iterations of caste. In fact, at best, there was some kind of an agroclimatic, division. Kurunji, Palai, and all of that. So Marudam, etc., and Nedal. And this allows Anna to move to the notion of anti-Brahminism, because now he's a political party, and he says, if I keep the outsider as a person, or as a particular identity, then my movement is only as good as that person or that group of people changing themselves. But instead, if I root it in the notion itself of graded hierarchy, graded inequality, which is I think one of the most profound definitions of caste system in India given by Ambedkar. He said, if I root it in the notion of graded inequality, then that's the best way for the movement to continue to be subaltern. Therefore, he writes this epistle. In his epistle, he writes this article called Aryam Irukkumidam. And he says, if a Brahmin ill-treats an intermediate caste person, that's where Aryanism exists. If an intermediate caste person ill-treats a lower caste person, then that's where it exists. And if a lower caste person does that to Dalit, and if a Dalit does that to a lower Dalit. So and therefore, the idea of Dravidian identity being an identity where you are a part of it by doing, as against ascribed versus subscribed, also gets pushed towards people. So it's a conscious idea. You need to sort of keep working on it and keep working with it. You can at best be a contender, not the owner of the identity. And therefore, you see from about 1950s to about 2000, even 1990, when 1920, when in 1920, when Nadesa Mudaliar speaks about non-Brahmins, he speaks about non-Brahmin Indians, backward castes, depressed classes, Anglo-Indians, and even Mohammedans and Christians. And today, in 2000, in the 2000s, we see pride marches being done with Periyar and Ambedkar photos, and also Tamil Nadu giving out a glossary for LGBTQIA communities. So it continues to sort of expand itself.
Right. So, one of the big parts of your book is about the DMK's network of reading rooms, Padipagam. Can can you expand a bit on this, on the relevance of these reading rooms and what they did for DMK as a political party, as an election-winning political party in those years?
So the reading rooms was an idea that came to Anna from a Periyar's taunt, saying, now that you've become a political party, you're going to give up on value system and you're going to be a person that's going to compromise perpetually. So that was in I'm not quoting anybody, but this is the message from Periyar in the way that he speaks. And so for Anna, now that such a capacious identity is built, where people need to fill it with their own ideas and their own grievances. So the identity needs to sort of take care of particularistic grievances of groups, redistribution of resources and opportunities, and representation of those marginalized groups in power. In that case, now that it is a little, it is floating, and at the same time it is getting built while the broad contours are fixed. How do we then disseminate it to people? And one such idea was the reading rooms, which solved two problems. One was party building, an organizational structure, which was very, very important to fight elections. And make no mistake, there was already a person called Kamaraj who built the Congress party bottom up from the 1930s under Mr. Satyamurthy, and then later also by himself. So you already have a behemoth in the name of a Congress party, and also a very rooted leader in the form of Kamaraj. So you needed to build a party structure in a way that it was sustainable, and at the same time it shouldn't need a lot of money, because the DMK, as K. Santanam at the time notes, was fighting at 1/10 or 1/15 the budget that the Congress had even in 1967. So reading rooms was, so the idea was to just put people together, give them an activity. The literacy rate was low, so therefore one person would read a newspaper out loud. There was a lot of writing and dissemination to see what ideas work, what ideas don't work. So it was essentially a very, very trial and error method system, where there was a feedback loop. Ideas that didn't work then go back in. Ideas that worked were pushed further. So a party was built, and at the same time the ethos became common sense of people, even if they chose to give their own names. So you had supporter autonomy and cadre autonomy. You could support the party on your terms, as long as you had a broad understanding or a broad concurrence, and you could be the cadre of the party on your terms.
So are you saying that these were basically not places where only the converted came? It was for everybody, and people then made their choices according to what they heard. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. In fact, I met one such 80 odd year old person who continues to vote for, and who in Virudhunagar, who continues to vote for the Congress party. And I mentioned that in the book, but he attended a rally or a manad called Sudar Manad, organized by the DMK in the 50s. And I'd also asked, the regional historians, even the DMK historians and all, in terms of where the Sudar Manad is. And then one line that they said was, Thambi, whatever you did in the broad framework was a manad or was your support for the DMK. So therefore, trying to trace this particular Sudar Manad in this region, I don't know. So here is the person, for the last 70 years, reads Borosoli every day or almost every other day whenever he gets a chance, but continues to vote for the Congress party. He says, I continue to read the DMK, but and even there are also readers of Janashakti there, but voters of the DMK in these reading rooms. They're the readers of Hindu as well. And one such person told me, what is this, a reading room? I mean, how can this be a reading room without an English newspaper? And he said, my old age pension is going to get doubled. So I'll definitely buy the Hindu paper and keep it there. And this mandram is called the Uday Suryan Mandram in Virudhunagar, which is essentially a tailor shop and a small room with a table and chair, with a bench and chairs. So there was a repertoire that was built. There was a vocabulary that was built in that process, through the reading rooms.
A political vocabulary.
Yes, a vocabulary to convey what the problem was.
Right.
And in fact, I met a person in Virudhunagar, which also I mentioned in the book, who said, Kamaraj should have done something about the devaluation of currency. He all promised us. His father was a Congress supporter. He said, "Oh well, he promised us that he will take care of the country, and therefore he was going he was going to Delhi." But and make no mistake, the Nadars were big in trading, so the devaluation hit them. So he told me that my father was disappointed in Kamaraj because he did not do anything about devaluation.
But the story is that he was not even consulted on the devaluation.
Precisely, exactly, yeah. So and this is where the vocabulary becomes important. The question was, அவர் ஏதாவது பண்ணிருக்கணும்ல, which he should have done something. Even if you push him back, he said, but, and then so you're already, because that's the image that Kamaraj had. He was a very hallowed person in Tamil Nadu. And one of the reasons why, be it Anna, Kalaignar, none of them literally, if you look at the DNK magazines between 1960, before and after the K Plan, you will see them as two different authors altogether. Because the attack that they had, that Bhaktavasalam was such a respite for them. Saying, oh, thanks.
So what explains then that, Kamaraj then went on to win a thumping majority in a Nagarkoil by-election for the Lok Sabha in 1969, I think, when the DMK's biggies, like Karunanidhi, and then the Speaker of the Assembly at that time, they were all leading the campaign for the DMK candidate.
The most boring answer to this is that the caste equations worked, and Kamaraj was very, very astute with caste equations. This is what Forrester and Gnanadasan say. But there is actually a lot more to the story. The 1969 election in Nagarkoil is a Lok Sabha election, if I am not wrong.
Yeah.
And Kamaraj was seen as a leader that was leading Congress party from the front at the India level. So he was still, and one of the sections in my book also is that Kamaraj was defeated as a candidate but conserved as an icon or a leader by the DMK themselves. The 67 election in Virudhunagar, as much as it is, so it essentially was the success of the political vocabulary that the DMK was able to push through people. So Anna did not go to campaign in support of Srinivasan, who defeated Kamaraj. Karunanidhi does not go, and neither did NGR. In fact, he only gets the only support that Srinivasan and his group gets from the DMK is essentially the photos of NGR being shot, which was sent to everybody, exactly, and in the hospital.
That is also quite one of the reasons for the huge success of the DMK in that whole election, apart from the anti-incumbency.
Yes, also a part of the mix, let's say.
Yeah.
A good correlation, of course. So therefore, except for that one photo, which was essentially a public good at that time, he did not get any support. It was essentially a group of 300, 400 youngsters who went door to door. They campaigned against the 17th Amendment, which meant that under the government could take over Rayatwari lands, not just Zamindari lands. They campaigned against the inflation. They campaigned against rising food prices. I shouldn't use the word inflation. And they also campaigned against food shortages. And Srinivasan is a leader that went to jail under the Defense of India rules. So he had, and this was Kamaraj fought a very similar election in 1950s in Gudiyatham, where a bunch of youngsters from across the state came and helped him win the election in Gudiyatham. So in about 13-14 years, Kamaraj becomes very big, and also he is not able to campaign as much as he wants. He was not around for as much as he would have liked. The damage was made, and the Congress party essentially had a bunch of very elitist people at the helm who were speaking to the media or who were speaking to public, unlike Kamaraj. So all of this put together, he lost a state assembly election. But this doesn't mean, Kamaraj was defeated. Kamaraj as a candidate in Virudhunagar became unviable in that election. So it
Yeah,
doesn't
when you
take away
say
from the colossal.
yeah, when you say that Kamaraj as a concept continued to
No.
remain alive,
Yes.
there is, you know, even now in the campaigns of the DMK, of course the BJP definitely, but in the campaigns of the DMK, I think in the last election, um, eh, they were promising Kamaraj Achi, right?
Yeah.
Kamaraj rule. So it's quite a paradox, really, that a Dravidian party is promising Kamaraj rule.
So there are 2 points where how Kamaraj can be seen, or how Kamaraj is viewed by the BJP, and 2 points in terms of how Kamaraj is viewed by the DMK. In 1952 election, when a majority is put together, and you know this better than I do, when the majority was put together by Rajaji, Kamaraj was one of the leaders who was against it, who said, let this election just go.
Yeah.
We will win this back. Okay. So, and in 1953-54, Rajaji writes in his own diary saying that Kamaraj is a Brutus. He's going to stab me. Because, and I also draw a longer history between Rajaji and Kamaraj, which is Satyamurthy and Rajaji had a certain friction, and then Kamaraj inherits it. So there is this friction that he had vis-a-vis Rajaji always. And because of Nehru's support to Rajaji, Kamaraj is keeping, playing his cards very carefully. And when the Kulakalvi Thittam or the elementary education scheme comes about, modified elementary education scheme comes about, Kamaraj holds back as against outrightly supporting Rajaji. He just holds back and sees how things unfold. And he also uses a few of his supporters to create a bit of a ruckus, which is when Rajaji writes this. And cut to 1957 election, Kamaraj essentially gives around 50 seats to former DK members in the Congress party itself. So the non-Brahmanization or the Dravidianization of the Congress party happens. And the Satyanavutittam, as we know it, was put together by a group of people, and one of the most important people there is N.D. Sundaravadwe, who's also a member of the DK. So and 57 election, about 50 candidates, 50 tickets, and Congress party people are coming out to Kamaraj and saying that if this were to the case, why don't you also start wearing black shirts? So, and cut to a respondent of mine who's Anbalagan's younger brother, Thirumaran, who I mentioned a lot in my book. He said that Anbalagan and Kalaignar and Anna and all saw, and Anbalagan told this to him, that they saw Kamaraj as the bridge between Congress ethos and the Dravidian ethos.
So this is one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, the relationship between Periyar and Kamaraj. So what was that? Can you talk about that a bit? It was a curious kind of relationship. Politically, for the DMK, it was hurting them, as you just mentioned, and it was at one point it seemed as if the Congress would usurp the DMK's unique selling points, basically, and there was a real fear about it. So can we talk about that a bit?
So for Periyar, Kamaraj signified stability, and Kamaraj signified vision. So here's a guy who's fought, who was in the freedom movement, who already has experience in party building, and who's considerably experienced, and heads a party which is India's biggest and oldest party at that time. So and is willing to democratize from there. So for Periyar's understanding of politics is that a relationship with a person in power who is interested in democratizing knowledge, resource, opportunity, etc., is the best way to be. So that you don't have to give up on your ideas, and you can have these tactical alliances with leaders who are willing to open up spaces. So therefore, Kamaraj signified all of these things for Periyar. And the DMK at the time, which was a fledgling party and led by a bunch of youngsters, and also this hurt of the DMK having split away. So a 75,000 member party becomes 25,000 in just one day, and Anna takes them all. So there's this irritation as well, and the reasons also at that time that was floated. So all of this said, so this was the relation, and Kamaraj, for his own reasons, whatever that be political, electoral, and also his own vision of the world. He did not see the world like how, for instance, a leader like Rajaji saw the world. So he also was interested in democratizing the society, and for whatever for whatever in however way it meant to him. And when there were people willing to work with him, he also worked along. So this was the relationship, and Kamaraj stood by, and make no mistake, he's one of the leaders that was able to infuse working class people into the Congress party as much as he relied on the elites. So for that was very big for Periyar. And
also, as you said, the Dravidianization of the Congress.
Yes,
is what
the DK people in 57.
Yeah.
So for Periyar, so why the DMK then? And the respite comes in the form of K plan. And it's not just the respite; a huge relief comes in the form of K plan. And
Kamaraj's exit from Tamil Nadu.
Yes.
Yeah.
And in fact, Periyar spoke. It was told to me, but I could not find a lot of evidence at the time that Kamaraj, Periyar spoke to Kamaraj, and it literally urged him not to go. He said, "People will squander the party here. Whatever you've built, just don't go. This is essentially a ploy. What do you think? What do you think? Will the Congress give up on its elitist image at the time?" He said, "Mr. Nehru is also not around. What are you going to do?" So, he was weak at the time.
Yeah.
And now once Kamaraj leaves, the DMK goes all guns blazing. Said, now the person who will speak our language is not there. And one last attempt that Kamaraj tried in the 1960s was the 16th Amendment itself, which was essentially a taunt to the DMK to say fall in line. And he wasn't expecting the DMK to fall in line. And that is where the genius of Kalaignar Karunanidhi comes in place versus an EVK Sampath. An EVK Sampath would want the DMK to be a communist style party, just tightly in it in terms of organizational structure, not much autonomy. But Kalaignar said, no, we are a party of the poor and the working class. We need to give people so much talk about agency. There should at least be some autonomy. That's what he says. So let's draw the broad boundaries, but there should be autonomy through and through. And in the 60s, when the 16th Amendment is about to be tabled, Mr. Raman at the time, and Kalaignar and Anna, and all of them are making a claim. In fact, Kalaignar, VP Raman, and others are making a case to Anna, saying that it's okay to give up to this, give up on the idea of Dravidian for survival, because we are achieving something, and the Indian system has ways to sort of negotiate this on another day. While EVK Sampath is very strong. There's a split in the party, and Anna leans on to Kalaignar and all, and then Anna comes out of the 16th Amendment very well. And the network of reading rooms that I said, so all the speeches that he makes in Rajya Sabha is available in print, in Tamil, in almost all newspapers of that time. And then anti-Hindi agitation, anti-Hindi imposition agitation, Mr. G.B. Pant and Kamaraj's silence, all of that just helped them one over the other.
Right. One of the paradoxes about the Dravidian pathway is that while on the one hand, there are these self-respect marriages, there are honor killings. Like if people marry out of caste, today there are these honor killings. I mean, every other day there is a case. And the horizontal solidarities that you have so nicely brought out in your book, as being the as being the backbone of this Dravidian Tamil ethos, that is constantly getting frayed because of caste violence, anti-Dalit violence, favors against Pallars, Vanyas against
Parayars.
So this goes on all the time. how does one fit this into the Dravidian pathway, into the apparent progressiveness of the Dravidian pathway?
You asked me not to wander away, so therefore I'm just going to tell you two lines.
Yeah.
Two lines in the wandering away, and then two lines which are going to straight respond to the question. One is the Dravidian movement was interested in building a solidarity between the lower caste groups and the Dalit caste groups. It basically worked in the bottom two sections of the society, which is where the competition is maximum. If I were to quote Karthik Ram Manoharan, a fellow scholar, uh, Brahmin as an idea is a no entry zone in the caste order, and Dalit is a no exit zone. No matter how many rules you violate or flout, you don't stop being a Brahmin, or you need not stop being a Brahmin. And no matter how many rules you follow of the Varna order, you don't get out of being a Dalit. Okay, so and Ambedkar says that it's graded from there. And this graded inequality means that you need someone always below you and someone above you. It is in this context that we need to look at caste violence here today in Tamil Nadu, which is the Dravidian movement is successful in the context of building a horizontal solidarity in public/secular spaces. In other words, caste groups come together as interest groups under the broader Dravidian Tamil identity, and act for their to fulfill their grievances, to secure opportunity, and for representation in power. In private lives, it is still an unfinished business. It continues to be an unfinished business. And the more secularized the public spaces become, the private spaces also have a tendency to sort of hold on to in a more rigid manner. This is the broad idea. And particularly with respect to violence against Dalits, the violence has continued, as you said, from, let's say, the 1950s, 60s till 2025. So the violence has stayed the same, but the reasons for the violence have fundamentally changed. The relative rate of growth of lower and Dalit caste groups has been faster than the rate of growth of backward castes or intermediate castes. This is what is causing violence. This is what is causing a certain notion of insecurity amongst people. So
growth, by growth, you mean
yes,
economic progress, or you mean population growth?
Economic growth. Economic growth. So the Dravidian model book that was put together by that was written by Kalayarasan and Vijay Bhaskar present data about this. In fact, even the IHDS data, which is still old, between 2004-5 there was one round, and then 2011-12 was the other round. I hope the third round comes soon. But this data, and even NSSO data, whichever is available on caste level, when we disaggregate and see, we see that there is the relative rate of growth of Dalits has been faster than the relative rate of growth of lower classes of the backward castes. And that's where the violence is now coming out of insecurity. This is not to say that it's a logical outcome. It is then the outcome can be plotted in the trajectory. We need to sort of have one more round, if not another round of politicization on these lines.
But that leads me to the next question. Are Tamil Nadu voters already tiring of the Dravidian pathway? Is it past its use by date? I mean, especially you speak about the challenges to this Dravidian pathway in your book, but you don't deal with it in great detail. But at this point, when there's an election coming up, one of the things that's constantly being talked about is family rule, dynasty, the appointment of Udayanidhi Stalin as Deputy Chief Minister has not gone down well at all. It's also, allegations of corruption. And now you have a new party in the mix, Tamilaga Vetri Kazhagam, led by the actor Vijay, who completely disavows Dravidianism. He said, I'm not going to link myself to anything that carries even a faint hint of Dravidianism. I'm not going to link to the DMK. I'm not going to link to the AIDMK, which is not as Dravidian, and you say this in your book as well, as the DMK. But so what would your advice be to the DMK at this point?
And also, I think Mr. Vijay is very particular about being Dravidian in ideas, but not the Dravidian parties. He says Kolgai Ediri and Arasiyal Ediri. Political enemy and ideological enemy. Ideological enemy being the BJP and the political enemy or the electoral enemy being the DLK. With respect to TVK, one of the biggest, parties that could be affected is Seeman himself. And therefore, we see him a lot more radical. So, Seeman's 10% vote share that he built over the last 10 to 12 years is going to go away. And yes, youngsters, less politicized youngsters for varied reasons are looking at an option. So, in terms of the DMK, hold on to the ideological repertoire that you have and the governance repertoire that they have, because the allegations of family rule, dynasty, and corruption, if we were to plot it on a piece of graph across the country, then the DMK is comparable to any other party in the country. And it may even fall in the quadrant that is lesser than average at times. The corruption exists, but it exists in a very sophisticated manner. So, but that, if one were to plot it, and also corruption, essentially corruption is what people make out of it, isn't it? It's essentially the story that you tell as against the story that is. Compelling case is of, sorry, yes.
Then what you're arguing is that all parties are the same when it comes to this, but the Dravidian Tamil ethos is what differentiates
yes, the ideology.
The ideology.
So yes, stick to the ideology. That's what made Jagan lose his election. A big, welfare delivery, but no ideological rooting, lose election. Aam Aadmi Party, great programmatic interventions in the form of health, but what about your ideology? You lost the election. So, and make no mistake, you're actually fighting an ideological behemoth that believes in making people not voters. And my interviews with a lot of Prant Pracharaks and people in the RSS also sort of tell me that, hum to log banate hain, voter apne aap ban jate hain. Which is a very particular, and they're interested in education, culture. They're not interested in bigger or the more fancier portfolios. So in that context, stick to the ideological rooting, deliver on governance, and see what happens.
So what's your prediction for the next election?
I don't, unfortunately, I'm not in the business of astrology. So I would be giving a very boring answer. But like I said, the DMK alliance is as strong as it can be. This is the first election. This is the first time where a leader has fought at least 5 elections with a very similar, or almost the same ideological, coalition, which is very different from the past. And while a lot of people may say a lot of things about Mr. M.K. Stalin, my personal engagement with him while working in the 2021 election or even after, he's a very astute, electoral bee.
So thank you, Vignesh, for a very interesting discussion about your book. We look forward to more books from you on Tamil Nadu and other parts of the country, since you seem to have had a wide exposure to elections in all states. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Nirupama. Thank you.
Bye.